Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legends of Tomorrow. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we got a little more insight into Charlie's life, got to find out where the third piece of the loom is, and it turns out she gave it to Enchantress, which that's really, I was like, whoa! That just seemed like a casual drop. I'm assuming, because I would assume there's only one Enchantress in the DC universe. I could be mistaken. But I'm assuming it's the same Enchantress that Cara Delevingne's plays in Suicide Squad, which I know most people didn't like Suicide Squad. I did, but that's neither here nor there. I'm assuming it's the same Enchantress. So I was like, oh, that's so interesting. You're just casually dropping I feel like such a big character like that. Okay. I also love Nate being like, whoa. So did you look different back then? She's like, oh yeah, but but basically when you're visualizing the story, it makes it a lot easier if you just imagine me the way I am now. And Sarah's kind of hitting like, come on, focus on the details of the story. So basically Enchantress hid the ring, the third ring for her. So now it's going to be pretty impossible to find it. Now it's going to be, because obviously it turns into a little bit of a back and forth, because obviously, like, Nate's kind of pissed because, like, this whole thing went down because they went up against Charlie's sister, but Charlie's like, I didn't want this to happen in the first place. But then Zari's like, we don't need to be passing blame. She just wants John to get on it really quickly, because obviously she's still intent of like, no, like, I'm sticking to you like glue until you like find a way to bring my brother back. So there's also this interesting moment between Zari and Nate, because she's like, oh, I met that other Zari, the other me. It's like, yeah, you must have a thing with, like, what was it, like, very warrior women. And he was like, yeah, women from different times who will ultimately end up leaving me. I'm like, ooh. I was like, that's kind of a stab too hard. But to be fair, it's literally happened twice now. It happened with Amaya, and how it happened with Zari. But yeah, it's weird because she's back in your life, but she's not the same version of herself because of a whole time thing. And Amaya left because of a whole time thing too, because she needed to kind of go back to her home. It's a whole thing. So it's just like, ooh, and Nate to kind of reference that too is kind of like a ugh. Because even I took notice of it, like the moment things happen between him and Zari, I'm like, this is literally you and women from different times that keeps happening. Once again, Amaya from the past and Zari from the future. But nevertheless, tangents and all that. But it's kind of like, it's like, oh, maybe something's kind of bubbling here a little bit. But obviously John's got a plan and everything. And I thought it was really interesting because we see Sarah kind of looking at like a glass, and she sees herself pouring it. And I'm like, what the hell? I was like, what the heck? I was like, what was that her seeing? Like, does she see time differently now or something? And then it happens later on when John's enacting a spell. It's like basically he needs to basically use everyone as like batteries. Because even Nate was like, how is that going to work? It's like, you're going to have to just shut your mouth and I'm going to use like a battery. And Ava's like, is that safe? That doesn't sound safe. He's like, it's not. Any other questions? Okay, let's get to it. I love that whole situation. But then like Sarah sees Ava moving, and it's just kind of eventually she ends up passing out halfway through the spell. And part of me was wondering, is like, is that kind of like her new power or something? Is she actually able to see time like differently? Like, is she able to kind of perceive time on such a level? And now the question then becomes like, is that something that's, well, because it seems like it's a byproduct of Charlie's sister attacking them, which I'm like, huh? Is it just like that's the thing? Why is that a byproduct of like? Because that's the thing too. Like, why is it happening now? Like, was it? I mean, because even Charlie was like, yeah, we don't know the lasting effects of you literally taking a hit from a god. There could be other things, but it's like that is interesting. Like, why it seems like it happened now? Like, maybe it just took a while, or maybe being hit by her kind of unlocked something that was already inside of Sarah. Whatever the case may be, Sarah ends up in a coma because of it. Because basically, the part of her brain that perceives time is messed up. So obviously Ava, kind of has to take over as captain, and obviously, it's happened before, but she doesn't really like that position much. So it's like, for her, it's like she's pissed because like this is, that, what happened to, Sarah, she's upset about. But at the same time, it's like they look at the her machine that she built to kind of look at time. Well, it turns out there's a whole bunch of encores heading to a single point in time, because Zari and Constantine fell through when the portal was, because he was trying to summon up the ring. They fell through the portal. Basically, he locked onto the ring, but he didn't yank it until like their time. So whatever point it was kind of getting, it was like from a temporal, time stance, he couldn't completely lock onto it. So they end up falling and going to some point in the past, and they end up in the same place, John's place, but it's far in the past, and now it's like a boarding home that they're in. And it's interesting because this episode put together, I mean, to be fair, they set it up for like the whole Zari and Constantine thing, like kind of being together, but it's like, it's an interesting pairing because they butt heads a lot. To be fair, Zari's pissed at him because it's like, because for her, she kind of diminishes him, like, oh, you're like some magician or something, but like, obviously, like, every time you're using magic and stuff like that, it fails. And obviously, Zari's boasting about her being an influencer and stuff like that. She's like one of the most influential people of her time and stuff like that. But it's like, yeah, you being popular and stuff like that, that's really going to help us. Yeah, you being an influencer, oh, that's so great. I think there's got to be like subtle jokes to that whole situation, because it's just like, oh, like her being kind of like the shallow like influencer that she is, constantly flexing about her influence. But like obviously there's like a deeper like meaning to that. There is a layer beneath that. But I love that like Zari wants to distract the doctor and everything. And I thought it was interesting because it seemed like, I was like, this guy does seem creepy. I'm wondering, I was like, what's this whole deal about? And then like he comes after her because he talks about her pretty face and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, I moisturize. He's like, yeah, people never notice my face. I'm just like, oh, okay. And Zari's like, oh, I'm gonna get out of here. Oh, look, my cough is gone. I'm good. You're a miracle worker. And I'm like, what's this whole thing is? And then John snaps his neck and she's like, well, yeah, that was Jack the Ripper. I was like, a freaking encore. He gets up. So I was like, okay. But then we see like other encores show up later on. It's Bonnie and Clyde. What is his name? The dude connected to Caesar, Henry VIII. I was about to say, wasn't that the actor who played, wasn't it Vincent in Eureka? Because that dude was also in an episode of like, one or two episodes of like Supernatural back in the day, which would be interesting if that was the same actor, because like the CW connection and all that. But regardless, I just thought that was kind of interesting. So John pretends to be Jack the Ripper, and obviously they kind of, I love that Henry VIII is the first one to go, because now they all have like their weapons pointed at each other's back. It's like a circle of like, I shoot you and I stab you and so on and so forth until we're all dead, because we all have hell weapons. Because John thought like, oh, like, Zari can't help, so she's going to just be in a way, I'm going to handle this. But lo and behold, she actually does save his bacon, because she comes in looking like Cleopatra. So kind of, I think kind of interesting, Zari kind of coming in, like playing a role and stuff like that. Which is so interesting. It's got to be so interesting for the actress who plays Zari, just because it's like there's, the version of Zari you've been since season 3, who you were in season 3 and 4. Now you're playing this different version of Zari. Now you got Zari pretending to be so, like, it's got to be an interesting thing as an actor to kind of, be doing that. So, but, even John has to acknowledge, all right, you did save my bacon and stuff like that, but eventually this truce isn't going to work forever. And slowly but surely, they do end up turning against each other. But what was interesting, though, is even with his magic, and John's still like, I can't find it. And even Zari's like, it doesn't make any sense. Literally, all these people here, like, we should have all been able to find it by now. Because, like, one of the encores, he had a special compass to get it, look for it. And it's like, oh, we'll have to get it from him. Then Clyde ended up shooting him. And then all they had to do was go pick up the compass. Oh, that was super easy. And I love that it turns out like, oh, the reason why they can't find it is because it's not meant, because you're thinking about it. When you are so focused on trying to find it, it's invisible to you. Like, because it's so interesting, because it does actually pop up earlier in the episode, and Zari kind of looks at it, but it starts fading in and out. Because I think it's because, like, part of her focus is on trying to find it, while another part of her brain wasn't really thinking about it. But the moment you're thinking about it too much, it hides itself completely. And literally everyone here is focused on finding the ring. It's interesting because they all ended up getting promised, like, the moment you find like this part of the loom and everything, they'll get to reign over, was it like the world, kind of like, as I mean, that's kind of what they all came back to do anyway. So did they ever explain how the Encore's time travel? I don't think they've ever explained how they. I mean, I guess it's magic, so you can just time travel with magic. But I'm assuming because I don't think they've ever because all the encores have always been in their own time. Genghis Khan was the exception because basically he was in his tomb. It just took him like hundreds of years to break free. So that was his situation. But like they never really explained. It's like, oh, they just conversed at that point in time. But it's like we never actually found out how they time travel. Once again, I'm just going to chalk it up to magic or whatever the case may be. But it was kind of interesting, kind of like heart to heart that both like Constantine and Zari had, because Constantine says like, you know, he's planning on drinking. I'm like, oh, if you get super drunk, you'll kind of forget what you're looking for and you'll find it. Because for him, it's like he's constantly living with his regrets, and that loom is a means of correcting a lot of his mistakes. So on a regular basis, he's not going to be able to easily forget about it. And obviously Zari, she's able to put a lot of stuff out of her mind. Like the fact is her boyfriend cheated on her with her assistant. She kind of moved on. She distracted herself. Oh, like she heard her mom say that, oh, she feels so disappointed because her daughter is so basically shallow and vain. It's like, all right, I moved past that, but like knowing that her baby brother is dead and that this loom is the means of bringing him back, like for her, it's like she can't just, you know, shake that out of her head, you know. So, and it was interesting because, you know, John kind of being there for her more so just offering her a drink, but you know, I just thought that was kind of a fascinating situation. At the same time, like Bonnie and Clyde, having, you know, killed all the other ones, end up joining forces with Jack the Ripper, and to hunt down John, which John was like, I'm gonna hand myself over, Zara, you need to run. Like the fact of the matter is you need to save your brother, and like that's not gonna happen if you're here, and you'll both be doomed if you stay here. So, and it's like, oh, him kind of, you know, letting her escape. At the same time, there's a whole situation of like, because of all of this, like Ava got pissed, you know, because of all those encores. It means like, oh, this is all on Astra. So she was pissed. She's like, she gets Genghis Khan's blade and is like, we're going to go to hell and deal with this. And it's like, Ava's not going to go by herself. She's going to bring some muscle along. And Nate's like, oh, I'm glad you noticed because I have been working. And it's like, oh, okay, Mick. And it's like, oh, he's like, right, that makes sense. And Mick is like, I was with my daughter and she told me to go to hell. Where are we going? And then Gary's like, yeah, the portal to hell is ready. Because it's like, this is kind of his first steps, you know, out of being, you know, an apprentice magician and all that. So Charlie and Nate are going to have to stay back and work on Ava's machine and everything. And they're like, we don't really do the whole tech stuff. Okay. And then a little bit, as soon as she leaves, Nate kind of looks at Charlie like, should we get a beer? And she's kind of like, yeah. And I love literally later on when we do get back to the ship, they're just chilling. I'm like, I love that when there's at least one person on the team who's always just drinking, doing nothing. Typically it's Mick, but he's kind of in the fold right now. So literally we see Nate and Charlie, they probably did absolutely nothing the entire time and just sat there and drank. And I love that Charlie's like, so did she ever like summon an animal or something while you were doing it? I guess kind of referencing like Nate and Amaya. And he was like, once, and she's laughing, which is still got to be a little weird considering the fact is you're having that conversation with Charlie who looks like Amaya, so that's still just got to be a little bit weird. But I mean, obviously it's been a thing for a while now, so obviously I'm sure he's well past the move, but it's just funny when you think about it. I also love it's like, all right, so how are we going to find Astra's place in hell? Oh, would you just go and grab the closest demon and ask them? Mick grabs one and is like, where's Astra's place? The dude gets terrified. It's like, it's so interesting that like even in hell, Mick can scare people. Even he's kind of enjoying the place because he's like, oh, it's on fire and stuff like that. It's like, yeah. I even love Astra kind of jokes about it later on. She's like, yeah, I'll be seeing Mick soon enough. She's like, oh, you're not even cracking a smile. I'm like, is that a joke? Well, I mean, he's done a lot of good, so I mean, Constantine's kind of done good as well, but I mean, it doesn't compensate for like, well, to be fair, his situation's a little different than Mick's, but I'm still like, does that supposed to mean that Mick is still damned either way? Whatever the case may be, Astra was like, oh, I did summon the encores and stuff like that. I was like, oh, it must have been Charlie's older sister. So Astra comes and looks and sees that all her coins are going, and she's like, at least let's have the most valuable one. And she thought it was John's, but it's not. And she's like, who is Vandal Savage? And Gary's like, oh, I know that. But she's like, shut up. And I'm like, I was like, Vandal Savage, man. I love that we keep referencing you, dude. Last time we saw him was last season. Obviously, he's a changed man. But I like the little winking nod. Just the fact is you reference him again. I'm like, I mean, it's perfect because we know he's in hell and stuff like that. So it's like, make it someone that we would know like that. You know, just a little fun, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But nevertheless, Astra and Ava are going after her, her boss. Obviously, this is personal for Astra because for her, it's like, this is the woman that took her off the streets, basically made her everything that she is. So it is a little harsh when that person, like, does stuff behind your back, kind of goes against you, which Ava was like, I totally get it, because she's like, she literally references the whole situation, because Astra was like, my situation is very specific, I don't know if you can really relate. And Ava's like, well, I had, someone named Rip, he kind of took me under her wing, but it turns out he manipulated and lied about, created all these false memories of my entire life. So it's like, oh, you must have wanted to kill him. But she's like, yeah, I kind of did, but then I realized it's just a situation of, you got to stop letting other people dictate your life. And at that point, Ava decided, like, I'm going to decide who I am, because obviously it's still the whole life. Because obviously she doesn't bring up the whole C-word situation, but it's like, she decided to be her own person, kind of go her own life. So it's like you kind of stop having to let other people make decisions for you. But it turns out Astra captured her. She also captured Gary and Mick, and I even love the moment like Ava came in, like Gary was like, I want you to know, Ava, like, I fought like basically valiantly, and then Mick is like, no, you fought it like paper, what are you talking about? And I love that Mick was like, I'm not gonna die here because my daughter has a soccer game I wasn't invited to, but I'm gonna show up anyway. So I was like, oh, look at you, that's so sweet. I even love Gary asking a question that's not important. What position does she play? So all of that's going down. Astra confronts, because it not only is Charlie's older sister there, the other sister as well. I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, even time wouldn't be enough to kill a guy. So it's probably like, I mean, it makes sense. She got just thrown into the time stream, so she probably just ended up in some random time. I was wondering if it straight up killed her or not, but it's like, no, to be fair, she's a god, so it wouldn't be that easy to kill her. But I thought maybe it at the very least would trap her somewhere. But I'm sure it just randomly dropped her in some point in time. But Astra now finds out about like who, like, oh my god, the mentor is a god. And it's so interesting because she's like, we want you to become one of our sisters. It's like, well, that's interesting considering the fact is your other sister, Charlie's still alive and well, but I guess you're not bringing that up to Astra. So that's an interesting conversation. But she's like, basically the entire time, like, that's why she's been training Astra to like prepare her for this position and everything. I was like, that's fascinating. But obviously, it's like, but Astra's like, what about my mom? It's like, no, I'm literally offering you the power of a god. You can kind of shape fate itself, like fate of the cosmos. Let go of such human things as your mom. But it's that's the thing. Astra is what she is because there is still that human side of her. She is still that little girl that had to grow up in this hell world, and so she's still that little girl holding on to her mom, especially because she was like, oh my god, my mom could get brought back, like there's still that side of her that's still that little girl wanting, who's scared, so that human side of her isn't going to disappear. So she plays along, ends up getting John's coin, and ends up setting everyone free. Because I also love the whole thing about like Gary, because he didn't tell anybody, like, oh yeah, the spell will send me back, but if you're not touching me, you get stuck here. But I love that he's telling Ava, is like, yeah, you're the best boss I ever had. To be fair, he's like, you're the only boss I've ever had. And, the thing with Constantine's not really my boss. It's more of a mentorship thing. And I love when Astra shows up, Rory's like, okay, thank God you're here. You're here to kill us, aren't you? Thank goodness, because I was getting bored. But she's there to set them free, so obviously she wants to help because Ava's like, come with us, because the fact is you need to make the decision to choose what your life is going to be on your own, on your own terms, instead of letting other people decide. So she goes along with them. At the same time, the John and Zari situation plays out. Like, Zari shows up in time and she ends up saving Constantine because she ends up using the the totem because she didn't think she could use it because she thought like I even love her explaining it to Constantine. She's like, well, the me from a different timeline is a badass warrior that's here in this totem, and he was like, yeah, I don't know what to say to all of that, you know. But luckily, Zari ended up saving him, and like his shirt had gotten cut open a little bit by Jack the Ripper, and they end up killing all of the rest of the Encores, that including Jack and Bonnie and Clyde. But what was interesting though is them being so close proximity. I was like, are we doing this? I was like, don't tell me. And they're kind of leaning in close, but then the ring shows up, and I was like, are we? That's heartbreaking if we're setting that up. Like this version of Zari and Constantine get together, that's going to be super heartbreaking because obviously, but the fact is this Nate, because even this Nate was like, oh, like did the other Zari say anything about me? And she's like, no, but I can tell she really cared about me. He's like, I cared about her too. And I care about you as well. So it's that complicated thing of like, you're in love with someone that you were in a relationship with before, but you don't remember, but she remembers. And there's a version of that person in front of you who kind of doesn't have that same connection to you. But now she might potentially have a thing for Constantine, which they started off hating each other. And now it's like, oh, maybe something's going to, maybe like opposites attract type of situation. So it's like, that's interesting. And it's like, hey, we're here to save you. Oh, you've already saved the day. Okay, gather up all these hell weapons because we can use them. I'm like, oh yeah, stockpile yourself. So like now you have weapons against any future Encores you go up against. That's nice, arming yourself like that. And then the lady, and then Constantine was like, all right, you're a little. He sees through her being like, oh, like you could have like done something a little differently with this situation instead of playing coy the entire time. She's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, is she supposed to be? And lo and behold, it gets revealed it's Enchantress. She's like, I'll see you soon, John Constantine. I was like, that's so fascinating. I wonder what she's like. Maybe she kind of has a more bird eye view to this whole situation. Maybe she's just curious to see how this whole thing plays out. And I think she's invested in all of this for her own reasons, but maybe in particular she's invested in John to see where his story ends up playing out. I don't know. Because she seems like she is more... I think because that makes me wonder, did she set this whole situation up to help them find it? Like putting them in a position where like they can find it? And she was just laying back being the observer? Or like, I'm curious to see what she gets out of all of this, And then obviously there's a whole situation of the moment Mick comes back, he immediately gets a beer and goes off because I'm assuming he's going to go to his daughter's soccer game. And obviously they've got the ring and everything now, but at the same time it's like Sarah sadly still in her coma. I think it was like, wasn't it Charlie was still sitting with her? I think the fact of the matter is there's also like Ava's machine still wasn't working properly. I'm assuming they turned to Zari because Zari is good with tech. Granted, the other Zari is, but obviously this Zari can somewhat access that subconsciously. So I think that's definitely going to be an interesting aspect. But even Constantine was like, the fact is, if the machine's not working, then like, how did you find us? And here's Astra. And she's like, we have a loom to put together. So it's like, okay, this is definitely going to be interesting. I like that we have like bad guys just casually kind of joining the Legends. Obviously, well, once again, we haven't had any for a while because obviously like it was Snart and Mick. But obviously it's like Nora was, eventually kicking it with the Legends for a little bit. Obviously, she was a former villain, and Astra kind of is in that anti-hero lane, I think, is where they're going to potentially set her up. I mean, depending how like this whole thing gets rewritten. I mean, that's going to be the thing too. Like the Loom of Fate could potentially be used in a position where Nate could get his Zari back. But then I'm thinking like, do you think they're going to split it up so that their Zari can come back, but also keep the Zari from this timeline as well? So rather than, because if not, one of them is probably going to get erased. Like either make it so that the OG Zari, the Zari that we've come to know, the one that Nate was in a relationship with, didn't like stays inside a totem, like that's where she is forever, or or bring her back but erasing this version of Zari, the one that her brother knows and everything. So it's a complicated thing, so I'm curious. Like I get the feeling like that might be where they go, where they split it so like both Zaris exist. If they do that, it'd be really interesting to see like whether they go down that route or not, whether that's even a conundrum they're going to get down. But I mean, this is interesting too because this whole Loom of Fate thing, which you also got to think about too. Sarah is literally the what was the word? paragon. She's the paragon of destiny. She's also the one that got involved with the whole Spear of Destiny situation in season 2. So it's like, it seems like, not unless you think they're going to set that up, whereas like Sarah actually becomes like a new like sister of fate, like where it might not be Astra. Do you think they might actually take an interest in Sarah? Like she might have the potential because of her ties to destiny, because she's a woman that's broken destiny in many different occasions, coming back to life from the dead. Like I said, the whole paradox situation in season 2 with the whole once again, I'm wondering, is there going to be, I mean, obviously, like, time got broken at the end of season 2, and obviously the Time Bureau had to fix that in season 3, obviously other lasting effects, but I'm wondering if there's still going to be any other ramifications that might be leading into this that are connected to the Spear of Destiny situation. Maybe not, I don't know, but it does kind of get your mind racing about what this whole Sarah thing is going to be, and, like, what else will she be, besides being able to take on an attack from a god, like, what, and seeing, like I said, is her perception of time being weird now, is that an ability, or is that just like a byproduct, kind of a nasty side effect? I'm curious to find out. I'm really excited to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.